promised he would take his children home. He always said tomorrow would be too late. Today your life can be renewed. The Lord is standing at the door. He said he'd love to tell you more. He has to leave you free to choose, so don't lose. So the Holy Spirit will retrieve us. I do believe he wants to lead us and let the devil go to hell. Oh well, I used to feel like a poor boy saying up to the man above, but then I thought that I knew everything. I thought that love was just love. What did you do to get me loving you? Just tell me, where did you come from? Tell me, where did you come from? True love means much more when two hearts are beating as one. Treat him kind now, keep it in mind how we'll never be apart again. He's supernatural man. He's got the world in his hands, and he's heard every word that's been spoken since time began.